Hey, Rebel Bankers, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris Naugle, and I have an extra special guest for you today. So I've got Jeff Cohn here with me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jeff, but what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about how he got started. We're going to talk about some of the obstacles he had to face and overcome in his journey, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch more because he's got a lot of unbelievable stuff to tell you about, and you guys are going to get some serious golden nuggets in today's podcast. But before we start with that, you are all at one point or the other in your journey. I don't know whether you're in the beginning, the middle, or what you might even call the end of your journey as a real estate investor, but I can tell you there's always one thing that we all face, and that one thing is money. We are always looking for more money to get through our journey, whether it be just starting, and I know that's a giant mountain in front of you if you're just getting into this, but the thing we're going to go over and the thing this podcast was designed to do is to talk to you and tell you why money shouldn't be your biggest barrier, why money is everywhere around you and how to tap into that money. And the best way to learn how to tap into that money is to listen to other people's journeys. Because a lot of times we get so focused on looking at someone where they're at now, you know, where we view them as being on the top. But you know what? Their journey is the same as yours. And that's what we're going to get into today. So getting started with your journey, make sure you grab a copy of my book, The Private Money Guide, and also check us out online for all upcoming events at chrisnaugle.com. All right, so let's jump right into this. Jeff Cohn, welcome.
What's up, Chris, man? I'm looking forward to chatting with you today. Thank you.
Me too. So let me just kind of give a little bit of a background. I'm going to try to do this, but you got so much stuff going on. So here's some of the things that Jeff does, just so all of you know. Number one, Jeff is a real estate agent, a residential real estate agent, but not just a real estate agent. Jeff has taken his real estate business to new levels. Today, he coaches real estate agents. He builds businesses that can grow without you. And let me repeat that because that's critical. He helps people build their businesses so their business can grow without their direct involvement. That's key. I want to learn about that. And then he's got an investment wing where he buys single family houses. And I think one of the best things that he's got going on is he is the number one agent for Berkshire Hathaway, not a small company. So Jeff, you know, I couldn't do nearly as good of a job as you can. So tell everybody a little bit about where you're at in your business today.
All right, here we go. So first and foremost, I'm a family man, lived in Omaha, Nebraska most of my life, have 3 kids, 13, 11, 9, they grow way too fast. I sought out into business knowing I wanted to hit the ground running. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. At 5 years old, I sold candy bars to win a Nintendo, and I ever since then, I wanted to be successful at everything that I did. And I tell that story a lot as I go around the country and speak. But what really, I think, put me on the map, I was an individual, single-family, traditional real estate agent. My grandma cried when I told her I was getting my real estate license back in 2007. She expected me to end up at a Fortune 500 company working an 8 to 5 gig, which is for some. It definitely wasn't going to be for me. On the disc, I'm a 99D, 99I. So I sold real estate, was Rookie of the Year my first year. After 5 years, I hit the typical point of diminishing returns for a traditional real estate agent, which is about 70 transactions a year. And I woke up January 1, 2011 and thought to myself, I need to do something different. I knew the blood, sweat, and tears I'd have to experience in 2011 to get the same results I got in 2010. And that's when I decided to build a real estate team. Since 2011, we went from 70 to over 700 sides. Like you mentioned, making us the number 1 team at Berkshire Hathaway in the world. I also started other businesses in title, in insurance. I own a call center in the Philippines. I have 100 virtual callers overseas. I started the real estate coaching company, Elite Real Estate Systems, which trains and teaches real estate agents to step out of the day-to-day grind where they're trading time for money and focus on building a business that can grow without them. And then I have the investment wheel, which, like you mentioned, we buy and sell about 100 houses a year in Omaha. We hold about 50 of those and then use the money that we generate off the other 50 to run the business.
I love that. So what you just said, like there was a ton of things you said there. It's an incredible story. It's like, it's actually takes you a lot just to get all that out. You've done so much, but the one thing I love is you use your rental portfolio to help you build the rest of your business. And that's something I know a lot of people that get into real estate, they don't think about that. They just dive right in, whether it be flipping or whatever. And then all of a sudden they hit that proverbial wall, that financial wall where the cash flow is going out faster than it's coming in. And you do exactly what we do. So that's phenomenal. And I'm glad you said that. So
thank you.
Let's talk a little bit. Let's take a journey back in time, Jeff. Let's go back to when you first started, your first few deals that you were doing. Let's talk a little bit about how you went from there to where you're at, but specifically on those first couple.
We're talking about the traditional single family acquisitions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or your first couple real estate deals that you sold. I mean,
Dude,
it doesn't really matter.
The real estate deals were just a joke, man. My family was out of town. My mom and dad were both in the business. We started a team out of the gate, but it was a community team. So I ate what I killed, they ate what they killed. They were out of town the first weekend I did my first deal. And for any agent that's done a transaction, the first one is the scariest because you're worried like you're going to make mistakes, you're going to mess stuff up. And I just failed forward. Everyone told me just fake it till you make it, fail forward, you'll figure it out. I was 24 living in a 1-bedroom apartment with a little baby girl, Jocelyn, who had just been born, a brand new wife, no money to show for it, $100,000 in debt. I come from a middle-class family. I always thought I'd be successful. I never imagined I'd be where I am today. And the journey, and what I am so excited to share with your audience and anyone and everyone that's willing to listen to me, is that it can happen a lot faster. We have our own perception. We set our own limitations. We are our greatest challenge, is just getting into our mind that we can do bigger things. So my first rental, I acquired it because I started going out. I've been a student of other people's failures and other people's successes. And so I asked the top 30 agents in my own marketplace to give me advice on how to be successful in my first 12 months in the business, because 19 out of 20 traditional agents are out of the business within 2 years. And I didn't want to be that statistic. And everyone, instead of telling me how to make money selling real estate, everyone told me to invest in real estate. Well, when you're in debt and you're 24 and all you can think about is putting food on the table, the last thing you're thinking about is how am I going to go buy a rental property? But it always stuck with me even to this day. And in hindsight, when people say, what's my biggest regret? It's that I didn't buy more doors. And every top level investor like yourself, Chris, and a lot of people that listen to this, when I ask them what's their biggest regret, that they didn't hold more doors. Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about flipping. It's the buzz. It's what everyone gets excited about. Flipping does not create legacy. It does not create generational wealth. And what I have learned is all those businesses I rattled off, they all exist to allow me to acquire single family, hold single family, and net as much as possible off of those properties.
Yeah, so, and I think that
was a long ass answer to a very short question.
No, but that's actually the answer that I was hoping you'd go with, because I know a lot of the people that we deal with and a lot of the listeners of the Real Estate Money School are realtors, because a lot of realtors, they get into that because obviously it's a path, I don't want to say of least resistance, but it's kind of the most obvious path. They start selling some deals, but a lot of times realtors hold multiple jobs. They're a realtor, but then they also hold another job in the beginning, and that can be tough because eventually you have to decide, when am I going to get off the hamster wheel of the trading hours for dollars part to go into being a full-time realtor? And that's a dangerous step. But what you did it, and you did it in a big way. So I'm glad you shared that, but you also did it. And then you realized very early on that you had to start creating some passive income. Even though you didn't have the resources to do it, you're like, I have to get a rental. And I don't know if that was because you looked at what other wealthy people were doing, or, however that happened, you did it. And I think that's an important thing, because that would make so many other investors and realtors out there more successful early on, because it would pave the way. It would give them passive income that allows them to do that. So that was actually a long summary to what you just said. So we're both on the same page there.
Yep.
So going into that a little bit, go a little deeper into kind of what that was like when you first started buying the rentals. You were a realtor, you were doing well with that. What kind of happened next?
You remember 2007, 2008, 2009, everyone was like, I don't know how you're making it. I never had a year where I went backwards. I crushed it when it was a buyer's market. There were a million houses to choose from. I think it's harder in a seller's market. It's better for Johnny Public who's selling their property. But I think it's more challenging for a salesperson because there's no inventory to sell, especially if you're a business that generates a lot of buyer leads, which my team today does about 2,000 buyer leads a month. And so in a seller's market, it's a little bit of a challenge. So we're excited. No one send me hate mail for this, but I want to see the market tank again. We're poised to pounce. And so back to your initial question, I could buy the houses at 40 cents to the dollar. I was being thrown all the deals in the world. I just didn't have the money because I was so new. I was wishing I was in a strong cash position. So now I'm working to be in a strong cash position so that when the market does come back down and the houses are 40 cents to the dollar, we're able to pick them up. So I had no idea what I was doing, man. Everyone just said, just do your first one. And my first couple were flips. They were long-term flips. I did lease to owns, and everyone defaulted, and I would end up selling it when I felt like it was the right time to sell. The real regret I have probably, Chris, was I didn't know where to put my disposable income. And a lot of people, I think, in the country struggle with this. Do you give it to a financial planner? Do you do infinite banking, which I do? Do you invest in real estate? Like, where do you put the money? And I wished I had put it into my team earlier on. I didn't start the team till 2011. So now a lot of my money over the last 5 years has poured into all these different business ventures that I'm in, and I'm finally cashing out. And when I say cashing out, what I mean by that is I'm not reinvesting into all the business entities. The foundations of all those businesses now are running smoothly. Now I'm taking every dime I can and sending it into my single family, multifamily acquisition wheel, in addition to going out and getting private money.
That's great. So actually, let's talk a little bit about what you just said there. Let's dive a little deeper into the money aspect of that, because you said in the early years, and that's a hard thing to do. I know myself, I mean, I've been self-employed since 16, and it feels like you're constantly dumping every penny back into the business. And I know you probably have been there too, where you're at that point where you're like, I'm just so sick of this. I'm working harder than I've ever worked, putting all the money back into this. When is it going to pay off? And I know a lot of our audience probably feels that way sometimes too, because you just keep plowing that money back in. And at a certain point, you're like, come on, I want some of that back. So how did that change for you? And at what point were you able to start, like you had mentioned, where you built the businesses, but the businesses started running without you? And how did you do that?
So I read a book really early on when my wife and I first got married. We were young when we got married. Like, I was 23 years old. And I read this book called How Smart Couples Finish Rich by David Bach. It was just a random read. But the idea of that book really talked a lot about how a lot of us focus on generating income or disposable income to be able to invest, when the reverse mindset that no one wants to talk about is not spending as much money. So I lived very frugal for 7 years. We bought our first house in 2007. It was a $137,000 split entry. I was probably the wealthiest person on the street, and I was driving nice vehicles and going on amazing trips, but living in a very modest home. Intentionally, because I wanted to put myself in a position where when I went big and built the big house and did the bigger things, I wasn't going to be worried doing it. And, you know, the whole adage of being house poor, I didn't want that for my family. So in 2011, I started getting really intentional about not trading time for money, which is a job. The 8 to 5 gig that my grandma wanted me to have, and servicing real estate deals, they're both jobs. They just have different hours and different responsibilities. In 2011, I knew I really wanted to focus on creating leverage in my business. And someone asked me how much money I made a year. And my first year in the business in 2007, I made $96,000 net. And I figured out quickly that if you work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, and you had made a 6-figure income, you're worth $50 an hour. So in 2008, I actually hired my first transaction coordinator and paid her $33,000 a year, because I believed that by taking a third of my net income and giving it to somebody else to spend 20 hours a week on an item, a task that I was doing for $50 an hour, they could be doing it for $15. I'd be able to replace that time with higher income producing activities. And I've become a freak around everything in my life, work related, when it comes to how I choose to spend my time. So 2011, I started, I've done everything as a single agent and as an investor. As you listen to this, I'm sure a lot of people listening have done everything, and from like putting signs into the yards to scraping paint to in the real estate world, doing transaction management, dotting I's, crossing T's, all the stuff. And what I found is the highest income producing activity for a residential traditional agent is outbound prospecting and meeting with sellers to sign listing agreements and then handing it off, and meeting with buyers to sign exclusive buyer agency agreements and handing it off. And it would be likened into single family acquisition. The highest income producing activity would probably be raising money and then building teams of people to find deals, and maybe going and approving a deal here or there, but essentially just being at the top from the visionary standpoint. And that's 100%. The position that I've always wanted to be in. So with my real estate team, I actually have a business plan I'll give to all of your listeners for free. It's a PDF if they go to jeffsbusinessplan.com. It's the step-by-step process we use to expand our real estate team. And I think you could use the same strategy for expanding your rental acquisition business. The team mindset isn't that different. And I would propose anyone that's running a traditional single family, multifamily acquisition business should have a traditional real estate wing attached to it, both for your disposition and acquisition, and the fact that a lot of the leads that you're generating probably would go traditional, and it'd be nice to be able to keep that income instead of referring it off to somebody else. So my first leverage position in 2011, I hired a marketing director. He became our operations manager. So he held the admin staff and all the admin accountable. We have a sign runner, 2 full-time transaction coordinators. And then on the opposite side, once we had 12 agents, I was the success manager and accountability coach. I held all of our agents accountable every week in a 20-minute accountability meeting. And then I turned that position over to our success manager. which then allowed me in 2014 to stop having that job of trading time for money and servicing the deals. And I fully stepped out of the traditional selling and just went into the business owner visionary role, which then allowed me to start all of these other business ventures. I didn't start anything until 2016. So I spent about 2 years researching and deciding what other ventures I thought were going to help me contribute to our ability to be able to acquire the single family houses easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, that what you just said there, working on the business, not in the business, sounds so simple, right? Just saying that, hey, you got to start working on the business, not in the business. Oh yeah, no problem. But when you're so ingrained in your business and your business operates because you're there doing what you do, it's very difficult to get out and work on the business. And that's when you know, what you said, you decided you were worth this much and you could hire somebody at much lower, and that allowed you to start really thinking differently. And I think there's so much to be said about that, whether it be, you know, working on your business, not in it, and figuring out how much you're worth per hour, or thinking differently about the money aspects of this business, because so many people get caught up, well, I only have this much money or access to this much, so I can only do this. That is not the case. If you change your mindset and you start focusing on finding more money and the proper ways where money, you know, where money is and actually how to go after it. And, you know, I talk about this all the time, Jeff. I tell people all the time, it's not about asking for money. That is the biggest way to fail, is to ask for money. It's about creating an opportunity to solve someone's problem. And the easiest part about money is everybody's problem is we all want to make more money. So if you can create an opportunity to help other people make more money, that solves their problem, and they're going to want to do deals with you. They're going to want to give you their money, right?
I love the Jerry Maguire. It's show me the money. And what I found in real estate investing, and actually any investment in general, is you have two camps of people. One that has the money, that want a great return, and the more money they have, and I've seen in a lot of instances, the more return they want to receive. And then you have the camp of people that can find the deals and be able to create those returns. But a lot of times the people with the money can't find the deals, and the people that find the deals don't have the money. And so it's a perfect marriage. And so we always were worried. I bought probably 5 or 6 books and listened to a bunch of podcasts on how to raise money. And once we started figuring out how to acquire the deals as easily as it now is for us, the money was there. It just showed up literally at our doorstep. We put the word out, hey, we're finding these deals. In Omaha, we're finding houses at 30% below market. And everyone was like, how do we get in on this? Well, like, we just want 10%. How do we get in? Well, if I'm averaging on these acquisitions, like our cash in, cash out return on our holds is 18%. So it's easy for me to create an opportunity for someone. And then if we just refi out of it, which is our strategy, we have a local bank that will let us refinance at 85% of the after appraised value, not the internal evaluation, not the purchase, not based on purchase price. So to give your audience one quick like white unicorn story, and this does happen a lot for us. We bought a house 2 weeks ago for $70,000 in a city called Bennington, Nebraska. It's like 6 miles north of Omaha. Bought it for 70. Nice house, 1,500 square feet. It was a raised ranch. So it's got like 3 bedrooms on the main, and then has a basement. You drive into the basement garage and then go up the stairs. In an older neighborhood, probably the house was built in like the 70s. It got appraised at $196,000. And so after our repair costs, which will be about $30,000, will be $100 in, we're going to get 85% of the 196, which I don't have a calculator in front of me, but I think it's around 170. Minus our 100 in, we'll get $70,000. Now, the beauty behind the check we receive for $70,000 is it gets us our initial cash investment back, and then it's non-taxed. Whereas if we were going to go flip that property and get $70,000, unless we did a 1031 exchange, we then would be paying, I'd be paying 44% on that profit. And so as long as I can cover my debt obligation, I can make sure that month-to-month rent is going to cover our payment, even in a down market. So always be hedging that. If we have a down market in Omaha, the biggest down we ever saw was 7%. Back in 2008, it went down 7%. So we make sure we can cover our debt obligation up to 10% if the market comes down. And then they're on 15-year notes, 15 and 20 years. So that property in the next, I'll be younger than 56, and that property will be paid off, and the sky's the limit. So our goal is to have 1,000 doors generating us a $200 million net worth portfolio. And I think it'll be about $1 million a month in cash flow that should be coming in with 1,000 doors paid off by the time I'm in my mid 50s. That's my big, hairy, audacious goal.
That's awesome. And that is a white unicorn story right there. And your market, Jeff, is just like Buffalo. We hardly had any drop in 2008. We just didn't. We don't go up much. We don't go down much, but there's stability in that. And this strategy, the white unicorn, what's so nice about that is, even though I didn't know that, that was the stuff that you were doing, You're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing that so many other folks on this podcast are doing. And that all just leads you to understand one thing: the strategies work that everybody's talking about. The successful investors, the wealthy, if you will, just mimic what they're doing because it's working. And, you know, that's the BRRRR strategy: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And right now, we've actually renamed that the burn strategy, because you got to remember, right now is the only time you've got.
I haven't heard that. You created it.
Yeah, the burn.
So burn, baby. BRRRN.
It's funny you should say that. I just sent that into the attorney 2 weeks ago for trademark.
Don't air this until you get it approved. I love it. I've never heard that before. It's amazing to me, Chris. I mastermind with so many people and we coach so many, and I speak from so many stages, and a lot of it's traditional residential agents, and everyone talks about how to build wealth, and everyone asks me what I recommend they do. And they think my answer is going to be go make these calls, join Zillow. You know, they think I want to teach them how to sell real estate. I hate conversations about how to service real estate deals. I love talking about business and leverage and the big picture stuff. But the thing I'm crazy passionate about is holding real estate. It doesn't matter what era, what generation. Look at the history books. Whoever had the land, whoever had the castles ruled. It is all about the real estate when you build your wealth. And if you come from nothing, the beauty is it can just build so quickly, exponentially. You buy one, like everyone gets overwhelmed when I say right now we buy 50 doors a year. That's insane. If you had said that to Jeff 5 years ago, I'd be like, no way, that could never happen. But we created a system that acquires single family. I spend $50,000 a month to feed this dragon. But we're at the point now. Last year, we made $1 million in equity. We bought $5 million in doors, and we're at a 20% equity position. So we have $1 million in equity right now if we were to sell off our portfolio. That's just craziness. And anyone listening can do it. You just got to start somewhere, just like I did 10 years ago, buying the one and then two. And then before I knew it, I had 10.
You nailed it. So that's the other thing. So many people think this is a lifelong journey. Well, if lifelong is 5 years, then yes, it's a lifelong journey, because I'll tell you, you did it in 5 years. We're at 74 doors. It's been 5 years doing the exact same thing. Singles and doubles. I don't hit home runs. I'm not buying big multifamilies. Neither are you. I'm doing singles and doubles because I'm comfortable and because I've got exit strategies there. And I bet you that's why you're doing it. You know the single and double market. So
my jam.
Getting home. Yeah.
Dude, I told my partner, my best friend, we grew up 6 months old. My parents put us in the same playpen when they had playpens. No joke. We've been best friends our whole lives. And he worked the 8 to 5, making 120 grand a year, great benefits. 4 years ago, I said, dude, we got to invest in real estate. I'm like, I'm passing up too many deals. I'm too busy and focused on all these other businesses I'd created. I was like, there's an opportunity here. So we dabbled in it nights and weekends, killed it just dabbling. And I was like, let's make this full time. And he's taken it now to where it is today. And it was funny in the beginning, it was all about let's wholesale the deal, or wholetail, where you close and just put it on the MLS. And we were averaging $22,000 a flip, which was the wholesale, or if we did renovate, it was around 22 was the average. And I'm like, okay, so we get 22 grand. We're 50-50 partners. I get 11,000. The IRS takes 5. I'm left with $6,000. I'm like, $6,000 isn't worth it, man. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. What gets me jacked is I buy a house that's worth 100 for 70. I can refi out of it in a year. I had zero money in. And when you talk return on investment, if you pull your money out, that's an infinite return. That's like infinite. Like, it's free money. It's printing money. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely correct. Oh my God. It's just, you're just talking about exactly what we're constantly talking about. It's so awesome. Oh my God. We could go on all day long just about that one topic, but what I got to do is I got to know a couple things for the audience. And also just for the audience, Jeff had mentioned a little bit ago a giveaway that he's going to do. So in the comments when this goes live, we'll have that right in the notes, the website where everybody can go to get that free, the business plan, right? Jeff's business plan. Is that, I believe, what you said?
That's it. Yep, Jeff's
businessplan.com. So we'll give that away and we'll make sure that that's posted. But let's get into just a little bit about, on that journey, everybody incurs some obstacles. What were some of your biggest external obstacles? Actually, you know what? For sake of time, let's just talk about your main number one. Okay, external
it's easy, obstacle. Man, and everyone's going to agree with it. So the 3 pillars I talk about building and scaling a successful business, the number 1 pillar is recruiting and attracting and retaining talent. So I'll talk about the second pillar is retaining talent by offering value, and the third is training the talent so they always can be the best versions of themselves. So the first one, finding talent, I thought it was going to be easy. I thought I'd just tell everyone I'll generate leads. I'll do the transaction management for you. You can plug into my marketing. You can plug into my name and all my success, and everybody's going to want to join me. And people would say, what keeps you up at night? I'm like, I can't believe more people aren't knocking on my door. And then the people that are, how do I select the right people? So I actually took a course taught by Gary Keller. Gary owns Keller Williams, which is the largest residential real estate company in North America. I went to a course 3 years ago, about how to recruit talent. And it talked a lot about the DISC test, which anyone can take for free on the Tony Robbins website. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm a 99D, 99I on that test, but I found that your best people, your support staff, you want to have as high SCs. And then your best agents, your acquisition managers, your disposition managers, you want high ISs. And so I started to get really intentional about understanding the psychology of the people that worked in the different roles and understand how I would best communicate with them and motivate them and hold them accountable. And so I'd say that my biggest challenge is just figuring that out. It took me probably 10 years to become a master, I feel like, at picking the right people to run the different business organizations and to be in the weeds within each of those organizations.
Awesome. That's a good one. And that's one that, comes up a lot, but nobody's really talking about it because everybody's just like, well, it's not something people need to hear about. Yes, it is.
Oh, it's the biggest thing.
It's a major problem with everybody who's scaling their business. Yeah. So that's external obstacles. What about internal? What internal obstacle did you face on this journey that you felt was the biggest?
So I read a book when I was young. I was probably 24, 25 years old, called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. So it's kind of a morbid book. The gal that wrote it was a nurse that worked in hospice, and she aided the deaths of hundreds of people. And she narrowed all of those regrets down to 5. And I know this is a really weird answer to this question, but what it taught me was that I was focusing on the wrong things. Like, no one is on their deathbed going, I wish I had bought another rental. Like, I regret I didn't buy more rentals. When you're on your deathbed, you're thinking, I should have spent more time doing the things I loved. I should have spent more time with the people I loved. I should have gone on that trip I always wanted to go on, but I was being cheap, whatever the case might be. It really changed my priorities as I built out my business. And so I regret not spending more time doing the things I loved in the journey. My journey, like they say, the joy's in the journey. I just wanted to demolish. I just wanted to destroy. I wanted to be successful as fast as possible. I didn't want to wait a whole lifetime before I was making millions of dollars a year, because I wanted to give my kids opportunities I never had when they grew up. I want to go on trips to South Africa and Hawaii and all these things that we now do get to experience. But it came at a price I wouldn't recommend those listening pay. And that was, I wasn't there to change the diapers with my wife. She remembers me not one time getting up in the middle of the night to help with the babies when they were little. I didn't go to very many school events. I mean, I just missed out on a lot of stuff. I was working. It wasn't like I was out with my buddies drinking or golfing or jacking around, but I regret that. So that's a more of an internal personal regret.
No, that's an important
how that impacts your business. I mean, you start looking at it, you're like, you look at your success and it's like, is that success? A lot of the people at the top have broken marriages, are addicted to alcohol and smoking and pornography and have all sorts of problems, just like I do. All of us have different struggles that we go through. And to me, to be truly successful, you're not just winning financially, you're winning in your personal life, spiritual life, health. You're hitting on all cylinders. I'd rather tell everyone listening, slow down a little bit, be successful in those other areas, because that's really what matters most.
Jeff, you couldn't have said that better. And I know everybody that's listening to this, you're all agreeing with that. Just remember, on the journey, you got to stop and smell the roses and also realize what the true purpose is of your passion, because passion without purpose isn't passion. So follow that. So we're getting to the end here, Jeff, and this has been awesome. And I know, like, we could literally take any one of these things that you've talked about and we could create a massive rabbit hole and just keep going into it. But sometimes you just got to kind of call it. So if anybody wanted to find you, because this stuff you did, the things that you do are incredibly valuable, how do people work with you? How do they get a hold of you?
I would love you. Send me a Facebook invite. You can just find me on Facebook under Jeff Cohn. You're going to get a template response from my virtual assistant. Once a week, we send them out saying I'm already hit my friend limit. And then we're going to invite you to follow Elite Real Estate Systems. But just to save you the trouble, so you don't have to go look for it, you can either follow Elite Real Estate Systems on Facebook or just send me a Jeff Cohn Facebook invite. You can also Facebook message me. I personally check all of my Facebook messages. So if something today inspired you, shoot me a message. That always helps me feel a little bit better about myself. And to your comment on passion, I always wanted to generate a net $1 million a year working 5 hours a week. I did that for the first time when I was 31. That's what I was all about. And I started to find the money isn't what creates happiness. Ones and zeros in your bank account aren't going to make you happy. It's how you choose to deploy those ones and zeros that defines your life. And you don't have to be rich to be able to use ones and zeros to do big things. You can still spend time and energy serving people. I always hear people say, oh, when I make that much money, I'll do this, that, and the other. I'm like, just do it right now. You don't need to wait.
It starts now. It always
right, what you do now. Yep.
I hate to keep going back. And I know some of you are listening to this, but some of you are watching this on YouTube. And I'm wearing a watch, and the watch says nothing more than now. Because what you just said, every single successful person says, if you don't do it now, you're never going to. It's not a matter of money. It's not a matter of the economy. It's not a matter of anything but you starting.
Totally. So I want to invite everyone, Chris, I'm going to invite you for free. I have an event I'm hosting this summer called the Team Building Summit. It's the only one of its kind, and it's in conjunction with the College World Series. Everyone's getting a ticket to the championship game of the College World Series, which is taking place on Tuesday, June 25th. My event will run from June 24th through June 26th. It's geared primarily towards single-family residential real estate teams, but the concepts do apply to investing. And I actually have two big names that are going to be there speaking. I have Gary Boomershine, who owns REI Vault. I spend $20,000 a month with Gary, actually $10,000 a month with Gary right now on single family acquisition, sending out about 20,000 mailer pieces a month. And then Matty Aitchison is going to be speaking as well about his coaching team. He's out of Sacramento and coaches hundreds of agents all over the country. So there will be some single family twist, and there are going to be tons of fun stuff in addition to the College World Series. So you can find more information out about it. It's $297. Go to the teambuildingsummit.com to find out more. And we'd love to see you this summer in June. It'll be fun. And Chris, I'll hook you up with a free ticket if you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And also for all the listeners, don't forget, Gary and Maddie were both on the podcast. So those are two rock stars that you can learn a lot from. So make sure you look up Jeff Cohn on Facebook, send him a private message. And just like he said, he answers all of his private messages. That's because the successful people are always the most accessible people. So with that being said, we're just at the finish of the real estate money school. And I thank all of you for coming. And I know you're going to get some unbelievable use out of this and some knowledge. And you know what? The best thing you can do with it is go out and do something and apply what you just learned on this podcast today. And all of you are at a different stage in your journey to becoming a rebel banker and your journey in real estate. So always get started by grabbing a copy of our book, The Real Estate, or the Private Money Guide. Here I am confusing the podcast with the book, The Private Money Guide. That's a great way to get started, and check us out online at chrisnaugle.com. So that's pretty much a wrap. And thank you so much, Jeff. This was honestly awesome. That's all I can say. So
Love being here. Thanks, man.
Thank you all for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you at the next episode of the Real Estate Money School.